And once she also asked, "What do you believe, Socrates, is the cause of this Eros and desire? Or aren't you aware how uncanny is the disposition of all the beasts, the footed as well as the winged, whenever they desire to produce offspring? They are all ill and of an erotic disposition, first concerning actual intercourse with one another, then later concerning the nurture of what is generated. And they are ready to fight to the finish, the weakest against the strongest, for the sake of those they have generated, and to die on their behalf. 7 Fate and Eileithyia are goddesses who preside over birth, and Kallone is a cult name of Artemis Hecate. And they are willingly racked by starvation and stop at nothing to nourish their offspring. One might suppose, she said, that human beings do this from calculation, but as for the beasts, what is the cause of their erotic dispositions being of this sort? Can you say? And I again said that I did not know, and she said, "Do you really think you will ever become skilled in erotics, if you do not understand this? But you see, Diotima, that is the reason, as I said just now, why I have come to you. I know I am in need of teachers. But do tell me the cause of these things as well as of the rest that concern erotics. If you put your trust," she said, "in the statement that by nature Eros is of that which we have often agreed to, don't persist in your amazement. For in the Eros of the beasts, in terms of the same argument as that concerning men, the mortal nature seeks as far as possible to be forever and immortal. Mortal nature is capable of immortality only in this way, the way of generation, because it is always leaving behind another that is young to replace the old. For while each one of the animals is said to live and be the same, for example, one is spoken of as the same from the time one is a child until one is an old man, and though he never has the same things in himself, nevertheless, he is called the same. He is forever becoming young in some respects as he suffers losses in other respects, his hair, flesh, bones, blood, and his whole body. And this is so not only in terms of the body but also in terms of the soul, his ways, character, opinions, desires, pleasures, pains, fears. Each of these things is never present as the same for each, but they are partly coming to be and partly perishing. And what is far stranger still is that in the case of our sciences too, not only are some coming to be while others are perishing, and we are never the same in terms of the sciences either, but also each single one of the sciences is affected in the same way. For studying, as it is called, is done on the grounds that the science is passing out from us, for forgetfulness is the exiting of science, and studying, by instilling a fresh memory again to replace the departing one, preserves the science, so that it may be thought to be the same. For in this way every mortal thing is preserved, not by being absolutely the same forever, as the divine is, but by the fact that that which is departing and growing old leaves behind another young thing that is as it was. By this device, Socrates, she said, the mortal shares in immortality, both body and all the rest, but the immortal has a different way. So do not be amazed if everything honors by nature its own offshoot, for it is for the sake of immortality that this zeal and Eros attend everything. And when I had heard her speech I was amazed and said, "Really?" I said, Wisest Diotima, is it truly like this? And she, like the perfect sophists, said, Know it well, Socrates, she said, inasmuch as in the case of human beings, if you were willing to glance at their love of honor, you would be amazed at their irrationality unless you understand what I have said and reflect how uncanny their disposition is made by their love of renown, and their setting up immortal fame for eternity, and for the sake of fame even more than for their children. They are ready to run all risks, to exhaust their money, to toil at every sort of toil, and to die. For do you suppose, she said, that Alcestis would have died for Admetus' sake, or Achilles would have died after Patroclus, or your own Codrus would have died before his sons for the sake of their kingship, if they had not believed that there would be an immortal remembering of their virtue, which we now retain? Far from it, she said, but I believe that all do all things for the sake of immortal virtue and a famous reputation of that sort, and the better they are, so much the more is it thus, for they love the immortal. Now there are those who are pregnant in terms of their bodies, she said, and they turn rather to women and are erotic in this way, furnishing for themselves through the procreation of children immortality, remembrance, and happiness, as they believe, for all future time. But there are others who are pregnant in terms of the soul, for these, in fact, she said, those who in their souls even more than in their bodies conceive those things that it is appropriate for soul to conceive and bear. And what is appropriate for soul? Prudence and the rest of virtue. It is of these things that all the poets and all the craftsmen who are said to be inventive are procreators, and by far the greatest and most beautiful part of prudence, she said, is the arranging and ordering of the affairs of cities and households. Its name is moderation and justice. So whenever someone from youth onward is pregnant in his soul with these virtues, if he is divine and of suitable age, then he desires to give birth and produce offspring. And he goes round in search, I believe, of the beautiful in which he might generate, for he will never generate in the ugly. So it is beautiful bodies rather than ugly ones to which he cleaves because he is pregnant, and if he meets a beautiful, generous, and naturally gifted soul, he cleaves strongly to the two, body and soul, together. And to this human being he is at once fluent in speeches about virtue, of what sort the good man must be and what he must practice, and he tries to educate him. So in touching the one who is beautiful, I suspect, and in association with him, he engenders and gives birth to offspring with which he was long pregnant, and whether the lover is present or absent he holds the beautiful one in memory, and nurtures with him that which has been generated in common. Therefore, those of this sort maintain a greater association and firmer friendship with one another than do those who have children in common, because the children they share in common are more beautiful and more immortal. And everyone would choose to have for himself children like these rather than the human kind, and if one looks at Homer, Hesiod, and the other good poets, one envies them, what offspring of themselves they have left behind. For as these offspring are in their own right immortal, they supply the poets with immortal fame and memory. And if you want, she said, think of the children that Lycurgus left behind in Sparta, the preservers of Sparta and, to exaggerate a little, of Greece. Solon too is honored among you through his engendering of the laws, and other men as well in many other regions, among Greeks and among barbarians, by their showing forth of many beautiful deeds, have engendered every kind of virtue. It is to these that many sanctuaries are now dedicated through children of this kind, while through the human sort there are no sanctuaries for anyone yet. Now perhaps, Socrates, you too might be initiated into these erotics, but as for the perfect revelations, for which the others are means, if one were to proceed correctly on the way, I do not know if you would be able to be initiated into them. Now I shall speak, she said. One shall not falter in my zeal, do try to follow, if you are able. He who is to move correctly in this matter must begin while young to go to beautiful bodies. And first of all, if the guide is guiding correctly, he must love one body and there generate beautiful speeches. Then he must realize that the beauty that is in any body whatsoever is related to that in another body, and if he must pursue the beauty of looks, it is great folly not to believe that the beauty of all bodies is one and the same. And with this realization he must be the lover of all beautiful bodies and in contempt slacken this erotic intensity for only one body, in the belief that it is petty. After this he must believe that the beauty in souls is more honorable than that in the body. So that even if someone who is decent in his soul has only a slight youthful charm, the lover must be content with it, and love and cherish him, and engender and seek such speeches as will make the young better, in order that the lover, on his part, may be compelled to behold the beautiful in pursuits and laws, and to see that all this is akin to itself, so that he may come to believe that the beauty of the body is something trivial. And after these pursuits, he must lead the beloved onto the sciences, so that he, himself, the lover, may see the beauty of sciences, and in looking at the beautiful, which is now so vast, no longer be content like a lackey with the beauty in one, of a boy, of some human being, or of one practice, nor be a sorry sort of slave and petty calculator, but with a permanent turn to the vast open sea of the beautiful, behold it and give birth, in ungrudging philosophy, to many beautiful and magnificent speeches and thoughts, until, there strengthened and increased, he may discern a certain single philosophical science, which has as its object the following sort of beauty. Try to pay as close attention as you can, she said. Whoever has been educated up to this point in erotics, beholding successively and correctly the beautiful things, in now going to the perfect end of erotics shall suddenly glimpse something wonderfully beautiful in its nature, that very thing, Socrates, for whose sake alone all the prior labors were undertaken, something that is, first of all, always being and neither coming to be nor perishing, nor increasing, nor passing away, and secondly, not beautiful in one respect and ugly in another, nor at one time so, and at another time not, either with respect to the beautiful or the ugly, nor here beautiful and there ugly, as being beautiful to some and ugly to others, nor in turn will the beautiful be imagined by Hearn as a kind of face or hands or anything else in which body shares, nor as any speech nor any science, and not as being somewhere in something else, for example, in an animal, or in earth, or in heaven, or in anything else, but as it is alone by itself and with itself, always being of a single form, while all other beautiful things that share in it do so in such a way that while it neither becomes anything more or less, nor is affected at all, the rest do come to be and perish. So whenever anyone begins to glimpse that beauty as he goes on up from these things through the correct practice of pederasty, he must come close to touching the perfect end. For this is what it is to proceed correctly, or to be led by another, to erotics, beginning from these beautiful things here, always to proceed on up for the sake of that beauty, using these beautiful things here as steps, from 1 to 2, and from 2 to all beautiful bodies, and from beautiful bodies to beautiful pursuits, and from pursuits to beautiful lessons, and from lessons to end at that lesson, which is the lesson of nothing else than the beautiful itself, and at last to know what is beauty itself. It is at this place in life, in beholding the beautiful itself, my dear Socrates, the Mantinean stranger said, that it is worth living, if, for a human being, it is worth living, at any place. Should you ever see the beautiful itself, it will be your opinion that it is not to be compared to gold and garments and the beautiful boys and youths at whose sight you are now thunderstruck. And you and many others are prepared, in seeing the beloved and in always being with him, neither to eat nor drink, if it were somehow possible, but only to behold him and be with him. What then, she said, do we believe happens to one, if he gets to see the beautiful itself, pure, clean, unmixed, and not infected with human flesh, colors, or a lot of other mortal foolishness, and can glimpse the divine beautiful itself as being of a single shape? Do you believe, she said, that life would prove to be a sorry sort of thing, when a human being gazes in the direction of the beautiful and beholds it with the instrument with which he must and is together with it? Or don't you realize, she said, that only here, in seeing in the way the beautiful is seeable, will he get to engender not phantom images of virtue, because he does not lay hold of a phantom, but true, because he lays hold of the true, and that once he has given birth to and cherished true virtue, it lies within him to become dear to God and, if it is possible for any human being, to become immortal as well. Here, Phaedrus and you others, is what Diotima declared and what I am convinced of. And in this state of conviction, I try to persuade others that for this possession one could not easily get a better co-worker with human nature than Eros. Accordingly, I assert that every real man must honor Eros, as I myself honor erotics and train myself exceptionally in them, and I urge it on the rest, and now and always I eulogize the power and courage of Eros as far as I am able. Regard this speech, then, Phaedrus, if you want to, as spoken in eulogy of Eros, but if not, and your pleasure is to give it some other kind of name, so name it. When Socrates had said this, some praised it, and Aristophanes tried to say something, because Socrates in speaking had mentioned him and referred to his speech. But suddenly a hammering on the courtyard door made a lot of noise, revelers they thought, and they heard the sound of a flute girl. Then Agathon said, "Boys, go look. And if it is any one of our close friends, invite him in, but if not, say that we are not drinking but have already stopped." Not much later they heard the voice of Alcibiades in the courtyard, very drunk and shouting loudly, asking where Agathon was and commanding them to lead him to Agathon. Then the flute girl who, together with some other of his attendants, supported him and led him before them, and he stood at the door, thickly crowned with ivy and violets, with many fillets on his head. And he said, "Men, hail! Will you welcome a man who's terribly drunk as a fellow drinker? Or shall we go away just as soon as we have wreathed Agathon, for which single purpose we have come? For I, you see," he said, "could not come yesterday, but now I have come with fillets on my head, so that from my own head I might wreathe the head of the wisest and most beautiful. Well, and if I shall say that, what then? Will you laugh at me because I am drunk? But all the same, even if you do laugh, I know well that I am telling the truth. Well, tell me on the spot, shall I enter on the said conditions or not? Will you join me in drink or not?" Then they all applauded loudly and asked him to enter and lie down, and Agathon summoned him. And he came led by his creatures, and as he was taking off the fillets to do the crowning, he had had them before his eyes and so did not observe Socrates. He sat down alongside Agathon, between him and Socrates, for Socrates had made room for Alcibiades when he saw him. On sitting down he embraced Agathon and bound on the fillets. Then Agathon said, "Take off Alcibiades' shoes, boys, so that he may lie down in the third place." "Certainly," Alcibiades said, "but who is here as our third fellow drinker?" And at once he turned around and saw Socrates, and as soon as he saw him he leapt up and said, "Heracles, what is the meaning of this? Socrates is here? Once again you lie in ambush, and just as is your habit, you appear suddenly wherever I believed you were least likely to be. And now, why have you come? And why did you lie down here? For it is not with Aristophanes, or with anyone else who is, or wants to be, laughable that you lie, but you managed it so that you might lie down beside the most beautiful of those in this room." And Socrates said, "Agathon, consider. Are you going to defend me? The love I have of this human being has proved quite bothersome. For since the time that I first loved him, it is no longer possible for me to look at or converse with even one beauty, or else in jealousy and envy of me he does amazing things, and abuses me and hardly keeps his hands off me. Take care lest he do something now, and do reconcile us, or if he tries to use force, defend me, since really quake with fear at his madness and love of lovers." "But," said Alcibiades, "reconciliation between you and me is impossible." "Well, I shall take my vengeance on you for this at another time. But now, Agathon," he said, "spare us some of the fillets, so that I may read this amazing head of his, and he need not reproach me because I wreathed you, and not him, for he conquers all human beings in speeches, and not just the day before yesterday as you did, but at all times. And at once he took some of the fillets, wreathed Socrates, and lay down. And when he lay down, he said, "All right, men. In my opinion you're sober. This cannot be allowed, you must drink, for we have agreed to it. And I choose as leader of the drinking, until you have drunk enough, myself. But let someone do the fetching, Agathon, if there is any large beaker." "But there is no need really, just bring that wine cooler there, boy," he said, as he saw that it had a capacity of more than 8 pints. Once he saw that it got filled he was the first to drink it off, and then, as he asked that it be poured for Socrates, he said, "It is no sophistic stratagem of mine against Socrates, men, for as much as one asks him to, so much he drinks off without any risk of getting more drunk." Then the boy poured and Socrates drank. And Eryximachus said, "What are we to do, Alcibiades? Is this to be our way, to say nothing at all over our cups, nor sing anything, but simply to drink like the thirsty?" Then Alcibiades said, "Eryximachus, best son of the best and most moderate father, hail!" "You too," Eryximachus said. "But what shall we do?" "Whatever you order. For we must obey you, for a physician is worth the equivalent of many others." 18. Prescribe what you want. "Listen then," Eryximachus said. "It was our resolution before you entered that each of us in turn, beginning on the left, should make as fair a speech as he could about Eros, and eulogize him. Now all the rest of us have spoken, and since you have not spoken but have drunk up, it is just that you speak. And after your speech prescribe for Socrates whatever you want, and then let him prescribe for him on his right, and so on for the rest." "Well, Eryximachus," Alcibiades said, "what you say is fine, but I am afraid it is not quite fair for a drunkard to be matched against the speeches of the sober. And at the same time, you blessed innocent, has Socrates really convinced you of anything he just? Don't you know that things are exactly the opposite of what he was saying? For if I praise anyone other than himself, whether God or human being, while he is present, he will not keep his hands off me." "Hush," Socrates said. "No, by Poseidon," Alcibiades said. "Say nothing against this, since there is no one else I should praise while you were present." "Well, do so, if you want," Eryximachus said. "Praise Socrates." "What are you saying?" Alcibiades said. "Is it thought that I should, Eryximachus? Shall I assault the man and take vengeance on him in your presence?" "You there," Socrates said. "What do you have in mind? To praise me for the sake of raising a laugh? Or what will you do?" "I shall tell the truth." See if you allow it. Well, if it is the truth, he said, I both allow and order you to tell it. Your word is my command, Alcibiades said. Now you do as follows. If I say anything that is untrue, check me in the middle if you want to and say in what respect I am telling a lie, for as far as my will goes, I shall not lie. Now if in reminiscing I speak of one thing and then another, don't be surprised, for it is not at all easy for me in the condition I am in to enumerate fluently and consecutively your strangeness. I shall try in this way, men, to praise Socrates, through likenesses. Now he perhaps will suppose it is for raising a laugh, but the likeness will be for the sake of the truth, not for the sake of the laughable. I declare that he is most strictly like those Silenuses 19 that sit in the shops of herm sculptors, the ones that craftsmen make holding reed pipes or flutes, and if they are split in two and opened up, they show that they have images of gods within. And I declare, in turn, that he bears a likeness to the satyr Marsyas. Now, that you are like them at least in looks, Socrates, surely not even you would dispute, and as for your likeness to them in other respects, just listen to what I have to say. You are hybristic, you not. For if you do not agree, I shall get witnesses. Well, aren't you a flute player? You are far more marvelous, to be sure, than Marsyas. He used to charm human beings by For I ascribe to Marsyas as what Olympus fluted, since Marsyas had taught him, so that the songs of Olympus, whether a good flutist or a sorry sort of flute, gods and is just as is erotic. Hear everything that after, and what in this manner must be false and not be real, since I was already committed to the, and now I had to find out what really the matter. I invited him then to join me at supper, simply as a lover plots against a beloved. And he did not quickly yield to me in this, but in time, at any rate, he was persuaded. And when he came for the first time, he wanted, once he had dined, to go away. And then out of shame I let him go, but I renewed my plottings once more. And this time when we had dined I kept on conversing far into the night, and when he wanted to go away, I pretended that it was too late and compelled him to remain. So he took his rest in the bed next to me on which he had dined, and no one else slept in the room but ourselves. Now, what I have said up to this point in my speech could properly be told to anyone at all. And you would not hear any more from me than this were it not that, first of all, as the saying goes, wine, with boys and without boys, is truthful, and in the second place, that it is patently unjust for me, once I have come to the point of praising Socrates, to keep hidden his magnificently overweening deed. Furthermore, the affliction of a victim of the viper's bite is also mine. For they say, as you know, that anyone who has been so afflicted is unwilling to speak of what sort of thing it is except to those who themselves have been bitten, since they alone will recognize it and pardon him if his pain brought him to the point of doing and saying anything. Take me, for instance. I was bitten by a more painful viper in the place that is most liable to pain, the heart or soul or whatever name it must have, bitten and struck by philosophical speeches, which grip in a more savage way than the viper, whenever they get a hold on a young soul that is not ill-favored by nature, and make it do and say anything whatsoever, and seeing in turn Phaedruses, Agathons, Eryximachuses, Pausaniases, Aristodemuses, as well as Aristophaneses. And what need is there to speak of Socrates and all the others? You all have shared in the philosophic madness and Bacchic frenzy, so accordingly you all will hear, for you will pardon the things then done and now said. But you house servants, and if there is anyone else who is profane and rustic, put large gates over your ears. So, men, when the lamp was extinguished and the boys were outside, I resolved that I should in no way complicate the issue before him, but freely speak what were my opinions. And I nudged him and said, Socrates, you asleep? Certainly not, he said. Do you know then what I have resolved? What in particular? He said. You, in my opinion, I said, have proved to be the only deserving lover of mine, and it seems to me that you hesitate to mention it to me. Now I am in this state, I believe it is very foolish not to gratify you in this or anything else of mine, my wealth or my friends, that you need, for nothing is more important to me than that I become the best possible, and I believe that, as far as I am concerned, there is no one more competent than you to be a fellow helper to me in this. So I should be far more ashamed before men of good sense for not gratifying a man like you than I should be before the many and senseless for gratifying you. And when he heard this, he said very ironically, and exactly as he is, and in his usual fashion, really, my dear Alcibiades, you're no sucker if what you say about me is really true and there is some power in me through which you could become better. You must see, you know, an impossible beauty in me, a beauty very different from the fairness of form in yourself. So if, in observing my beauty, you are trying to get a share in it and to exchange beauty for beauty, you are intending to get far the better deal. For you are trying to acquire the truth of beautiful things in exchange for the seeming and opinion of beautiful things, and you really have in mind to exchange gold for bronze, too, but, blessed one, do consider better. Without your being aware of it, I may be nothing. Thought, you know, begins to have keen eyesight when the sight of the eyes starts to decline from its peak, and you are still far from that. And I heard this, and said, this is the way matters stand on my side. Not one of my words has been said in a way different from what I think, but you yourself take whatever counsel you believe to be best for yourself and me. Well, he said, what you say is good, for in the future, after deliberating, we shall do whatever looks best to us two concerning these things and the rest. So I, when I had heard and said these things, and had shot my darts as it were, thought he had been wounded. And I got up, and did not allow him to speak any more, but wrapped my mantle around him, for it was winter, and lay down under his blanket, and I threw my arms around this truly demonic and amazing being, and lay down beside him the whole night. And not even in this, Socrates, will you say that I lie. But when one had done this, he so far prevailed over me and despised and laughed at my youthful beauty and committed an outrage against it, and in that regard I believed I was something special, men of the jury, for you are the judges of Socrates' arrogance. For know well, by the gods, by the goddesses, that though I slept the night through with Socrates I got up without anything more untoward having happened than would have been the case if I had slept with my father or elder brother. So after this, what notion do you suppose I had? I believed I had been dishonest, and yet one still admired his nature, moderation, and courage. I had met a human being whose prudence and endurance were such as I believed I should never encounter. Consequently, I did not know how I could be angry at him and be deprived of his association, nor did I have any resources whereby I could attract him. I knew well that, on all sides, he was far more invulnerable to money than Ajax was to iron, and even at that one point where I believed he could be taken, he had escaped me. So I was in a quandary, and enslaved by this human being as no one has been by anyone else. I wandered about in distraction. Now, all this had happened to me earlier, and after this we went together on the expedition to Potidæa, and we shared our mess there. Now first of all he faced trials not only better than I did but better than all others. Whenever we were cut off somewhere and compelled to go without food, as happens in campaigns, the others were nothing compared to him in self-control. And again at festivities he alone was able to take pleasure in other things, and in drinking as well, for even though he wasn't willing to drink, whenever he was compelled to do so, he outdid everybody. And what is the most amazing thing of all, no human being has ever seen Socrates drunk. Now it is my opinion that there will soon be a test of this. And again, in regard to resistance against the winter, for winters are terrible there, all the rest that he did was amazing. And once when the frost was the most terrible imaginable, and no one went outdoors, or if any did go out, they wrapped themselves in an amazing number of garments and put on shoes and tied up their feet in felt and sheepskins. He went out among them with the same sort of mantle as he wore at any time, and without shoes he marched through the ice more easily than the others did shod, and the soldiers looked askance at him as if he were despising them. And that is the way things were. What sort of thing the strong man did and dared at 21 there on campaign once, is worth hearing. Once, he had gotten a thought, and he stood on the same spot from dawn on, considering it, and when he made no progress, he did not let up but stood searching. And it was already noon, and the men became aware of it, and in amazement one said to another that Socrates had stood there in reflection since dawn. And finally some Ionians, when it was evening and they had dined, for it was then summer, brought out their pallets and slept in the cold and watched to see if he would also stand during the night. And he stood until it was dawn and the sun came up, and then having made a prayer to the sun he went away. And in combat, if you want to hear about it, for it is just to credit him with this, once when there was a battle for which the generals gave me the prize of excellence, no other human being saved me but he, for he was not willing to leave me wounded, but saved both myself and my weapons. And I even then, Socrates, asked the generals to offer you the prize of excellence. And in this too you will not blame me and say that I lie, but as a matter of fact, when the generals looked to my rank and wanted to offer me the prize of excellence, you proved more eager than the generals that I take it rather than yourself. Furthermore, men, it was worthwhile to behold Socrates when the army retreated in flight from Delium, for I happened to be there on horseback and he was a hoplite. The soldiers were then in rout, and while he and Laches were retreating together, I came upon them by chance. And as soon as I saw them, I at once urged the two of them to take heart, and I said I would not leave them behind. I had an even finer opportunity to observe Socrates there than I had had at Potidæa, for I was less in fear because I was on horseback. First of all, how much more sensible he was than Laches, and secondly, it was my opinion, Aristophanes, and this point is yours, that walking there just as he does here in Athens, stalking like a pelican, his eyes darting from side to side, 22 quietly on the lookout for friends and foes, he made it plain to everyone even at a great distance that if one touches this real man, he will defend himself vigorously. Consequently, he went away safely, both he and his comrade, for when you behave in war as he did, then they just about do not even touch you, instead they pursue those who turn in headlong flight. Now, one could praise Socrates for many other amazing things, but whereas for the rest of his pursuits, one might perhaps say the like about someone else as well, what deserves all wonder is that respect in which he is like no human being, neither the ancients nor those of the present day. For one might liken Brasidas and others to such a one as Achilles was, and, in turn, liken the sort that Pericles was to both Nestor and Antenor, and there are others as well, and of the rest one might make likenesses in the same way. But the sort that this human being in his strangeness proved to be, both in himself and in his speeches, one could not even come close to finding, whether one looked among the men of today or among the ancients, unless, after all, one were to liken him in himself and in his speeches to those I say, to no human being but to Silenuses and Satyrs. And what is more, I omitted to say at the beginning that his speeches too are most like the Silenuses when opened up. For were one willing to hear Socrates' speeches, they would at first look altogether laughable. The words and phrases that they wrap around themselves on the outside are like that, the very hide of a hybristic satyr. For he talks of pack-asses, blacksmiths, shoemakers, and tanners, and it looks as if he is always saying the same things through the same things, and hence every inexperienced and foolish human being would laugh at his speeches. But if one sees them opened up and gets oneself inside them, one will find, first, that they alone of speeches have sense inside, and, second, that they are most divine and have the largest number of images of virtue in them, and that they apply to the largest area, indeed to the whole area that it is proper to examine for one who is going to be beautiful and good. Here, men, is what I praise Socrates for, and I mixed in with it what, in turn, I blame him for, when I told you how he committed an outrage against me. And what is more, he not only did this to me, but to Charmides the son of Glaucon, Euthydemus the son of Diocles, and many others, for while deceiving them into thinking of him as the lover, he brings it about that he is the beloved rather than the lover. It is this that I am telling you, Agathon. Do not be deceived by him, but with the knowledge of our afflictions be on your guard, and do not, as in the proverb, like a fool realize it after you have suffered. When Alcibiades said this, there was laughter at his outspokenness because it was thought that he was still erotically inclined toward Socrates. Then Socrates said, "You are sober, in my opinion, Alcibiades, for otherwise you would never have so elegantly cast a screen about yourself and tried to conceal why you said all this, for you spoke of it as if it were a side issue by inserting it at the end, as though you had not said everything for its sake, to set Agathon and me at odds, believing that I must love you and no one else, and that Agathon must be loved by you and by no one else. But you did not get away with it. This satyr and Silenic drama of yours was quite obvious." Well, my dear Agathon, see that he does not get the advantage, and prepare yourself against anyone setting you and me at odds. Then Agathon said, "Why, Socrates, I am afraid that what you say is true. My evidence is the fact that he lay down between you and me so that he may hold us apart." "Well, you will not get the advantage, but I shall come and lie down beside you." "Yes," Socrates said, "do come lie down in the place beside me." "Zeus?" Alcibiades said. "What the fellow does to me." He believes he must surpass me everywhere. Well, if nothing else, you wondrous being, let Agathon lie down between us. But that is impossible, Socrates said. For you praised me, and I in turn must praise the one on the right. Surely if Agathon lies down next to you, he will not praise me again, will he, before he has been praised by me? But leave it as it is, demonic being, and do not begrudge the lad's being eulogized by me, for I want very much to sing his praises. Now I get it, Alcibiades, Agathon said. It is impossible for me to remain here, and I shall not fail to change my place so that I may be praised by Socrates. This is the usual thing, Alcibiades said. When Socrates is present, it is impossible for someone else to get hold of the beauties, just as now you see how resourcefully he has found a persuasive argument to get Agathon to lie down beside him. Now Agathon got up to lie down beside Socrates, but suddenly a large crowd of revelers came to the door, and finding it open, someone had gone out. They walked straight in among the guests and lay down. And everything was full of commotion, and everybody was compelled, but no longer with any order, to drink a great deal of wine. Now Aristodemus said that Eryximachus, Phaedrus, and some others went away, but he himself was overtaken by sleep. And he slept very deeply, because the night was far gone and the cocks were already singing when he woke toward daybreak. And on awakening he saw that the rest were sleeping or had gone away, but Agathon, Aristophanes, and Socrates were the only ones who were still awake, and they were drinking from a large cup, passing it from left to right. Socrates was conversing with them. And Aristodemus said, he did not remember the other points of the speeches, for he was not only absent at the start, but was dozing. However, the chief point, he said, was that Socrates was compelling them to agree that the same man should know how to make comedy and tragedy, and that he who is by art a tragic poet is also a comic poet. They were compelled to admit this, though they were not following too well and were nodding. Aristophanes went to sleep first, and then, when it was already day, Agathon. Then Socrates, having put them to bed, got up and went away, and he, Aristodemus, followed, just as he was accustomed to, and Socrates went to the Lyceum, washed up, and spent the rest of his day just as he did at any other time. And once he had passed the time in this way, toward evening he took his rest at home,